So this is part 2 of the video. We're going to talk about construction recruitment, and I'm just going to start with a bit of a summary. So recruitment agencies and consultants can be viewed by some in the industry in a dim light, which I'm sure we've heard of. And we've heard stories of unethical practice, vacancies advertised that perhaps don't exist, exaggerated salaries, churn, and situations where you're employing for one company, but also taking staff for another company from the same company, poorly matched candidates to employers, and so forth. So what I want to do is just delve a little bit into that and ask you guys some questions and your thoughts on the matter. So Rich, starting with you, how do we change this image? And does this make your job harder from the get-go?
I don't think it makes our job harder. I think the only way it's going to get solved is for people to stop working with people that are doing the things you've just described. I think it's as simple as that. But some people will work with somebody because they promise to be 5p an hour cheaper than the other person, and sometimes pound notes talk, and sometimes a bit of that, I think. But I think the answer is just get those people out of the industry by not working with them. I think it's as simple as that. It will always exist.
And Russ, same question to you.
Yeah, I think I think it will probably always exist. If I've got to be honest, it's sometimes, and you hear people talk about it. Recruitment can be almost seen as the wild, wild west. If you actually look at it and how perhaps it could be regulated a little bit more, is with some actual sort of guidance and regulations around the industry, because there isn't a huge amount. Certainly not working with these people that try to operate in that manner will reduce it. But unfortunately, I think it's trying to find a good working partner with a recruiter and sticking with that rather than shopping around too much.
Yeah. And what leads to these type of practices? Because we kind of, you both, I've raised the question, so I've recognised it. You both kind of agree in some respects because you've recognised it. What leads this? Why? Why does this happen? What's the environment that creates this kind of behaviour?
I think it's the skill shortage we've discussed previously. So if you've got good guys and you can move them from company to company, some people will do that because it isn't easy to go and find fresh people that will fit the job, partly. And I think it's just people being lazy, if I'm honest. They just would rather cut corners and make money than do it properly. I think it's, I think it is as simple as that.
And Russ, you said you've recognised it and you don't think obviously we're going to see the end to this anytime soon, if at all. So is there anything that Richard didn't cover there that you can see why people would behave in this way, or what sort of why the environment creates this behaviour?
Jamie, I've worked in these environments. Before this was part of the reason why I set up my own business, is to try and stop that environment. And it's when you have a commission, pretty much a commission-based environment, people, will do all sorts of manners that are well out of a thought process or well out of any particular ethical process to make their money on commission, rather than thinking about the long-term longevity of working with a business over time and many years and placing people and making good money off of good choices and good placements. They'll cut corners to get the commission, and then they'll be out of recruitment in 18 months because they haven't got anyone else that's willing to trust them. So it's I think you're always going to have those chances that are going to join the recruitment industry, if I've got to be honest, but it's down to the recruitment employers to make sure that they're vetting and managing these individuals a hell of a lot better.
So as a layman in your specialism, if you like, wouldn't just moving away from a commission-based salary, paying recruiters their value, and they wouldn't then behave like that? Or is that too simplistic?
Too simplistic. It's not that recruiters aren't on a full commission base, that they do get paid a salary. The salary is typically a little bit lower, and then they get paid higher in commission. The problem that you have, if you pay someone more money on a salary base, there's no incentive to work at that higher level. And it's that typical thing, people believe recruitment is easy. I'm telling you now, I've done it far too long, and it is flipping hard. You need to work long hours and non-stop tenacity, and you'll be knocked back every 5 minutes until you get a foothold in the market. So you don't make money until year 3, year 4, year 5. So it's if you do it ethically. So it's very difficult to go, right, okay, we'll just pay a higher basic and, you know, sort of knock the commission on the head to have that platform. Because the people, if you're any good and you've got the right ethics, join recruitment is to earn good money, to be rewarded from working in the right processes correctly.
Yeah, I can recognise that. Rich, I want to change the subject a little bit. So why is there no longer a job for life? And does the gig economy fuel this situation?
Gig economy, certainly. If you look over the last 10 years, there's been an explosion in, you know, Deliveroo drivers, Amazon drivers, any manner of things in that kind of industry. And it's not bad money. We've had a few people leave and said, oh, I'm getting a van, I'm going delivering for Amazon, because, you know, they're listening to their music all day. They're not being shouted at by some foreman in a trench, you know, with a shovel and everything else. And yeah, not a bad choice, is it? Listening to radio all day, driving around chucking parcels at people. So gig economy definitely has added competition to the market, I would say. Yeah.
And the job for life thing, I mean, obviously there's a lot more flexibility, isn't there? I mean, if when we think about gig economy and changes, we're also thinking about people working part-time, people working flexible hours. We've got more freelance, so you know, consultants and contractors and what have you. I mean, is it a good shift? I mean, we talk about why don't people work for life, but I presume in some regards, changing jobs allows you to become more skilled. You have more variety. So, what's your thoughts on that?
A lot of our operatives have been with us for several years, which you wouldn't think would happen in a temporary labour supply. The reason they stay with us is they don't want a job for life. They want to be able to pick and choose their work. They want to be able to stay local. If they're a Portsmouth-based gang and you're working for a regional contractor that says, yeah, your next job's in Newhaven, you're staying away, we'll pay you 20 quid a night to stay away, well, great, it doesn't, you know, cover much or whatever. They'd rather stay local, they'd rather choose their work, and I don't think, does a job for life mean anything? The amount of you know, the companies that have just gone bust locally in the last few months, you might have worked for them before you had a job for life. Well, sorry, you didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, good point.
So a lot of people just are more than happy earning they get more money as well, I think, than a lot of directly employed people. They work there 48 weeks a year and they stick in their skilled labour services van and they work within 20 miles of Portsmouth for any number of different contractors, and they like it. So.
And Russ, on the professional side, you know, in sort of real terms, you know, whether you're coming in as an undergraduate, graduate from college, whatever, there's a certain level of sort of training and structure that needs to go behind that. You know, from post qualifications, whether it's sort of doing an MSCIB, what have you, and then building up a certain number of years behind you. But we still see people even moving in those periods where they should be getting that foundation. So, sort of going back to this sort of job for life, what's your views on it? And should we really be seeing people moving when they should be actually gaining experience?
I think two parts of that question. I couldn't agree more. No, people shouldn't be moving while they're sort of cutting their teeth into their role and getting their experience, because I think that hinders you more than progresses you. You know, you've got to learn how to do your job. You know, and flitting around between companies is not going to help you. I think in terms of the job for life, I mean, you know, I'm of an era that was never really a thing. You know, I just, when you're working with employers now, a job for life isn't really, I think it's sort of a culture of all of us, how we've now changed in terms of how we employ and how we sort of grow our staff. Opportunity can be so much that, you know, every 2, 3, maybe 5 years, someone might be wanting to move on to gain another role that they can't in that company. So yeah, a job for life isn't really something I hear too much about, if I've got to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to move the subject on a bit. So in terms of obviously your role as a recruitment agency, recruitment consultant, we now have obviously platforms such as, you know, you've got your Indeed and JobSite and what have you. Is that changing the face of recruitment, or is that supplementary to? What's your thoughts on that?
That's a good question, actually. It's well, as a recruiter, we use those platforms. So, and I know everybody else as business owners can also use those platforms. I don't think it's changing the industry. because the difference always is and always will be for me and my business is that I hold high level relationships with the majority of regional and national contractors that are based in this area. And if someone's looking for work that's at a professional level, putting your CV on one of these portals, although that might feel great, won't really do you much service, because what will happen is, as we spoke about earlier, the wild, wild west of recruitment will fire your CV absolutely everywhere without your permission, losing weightability or countability on it. So the difference is where we hold these relationships, we can speak to people at the high end that are looking, that we can marry up these people to work better. So we benefit from these platforms, but I'm not too sure how much construction companies so much benefit from them in terms of them recruiting for it, because you have to sift through tens of thousands of applications to find one diamond.
Yeah, I recognise that on a personal level.
Yeah.
And I guess, Rich, from your side of things, you used the analogy in the previous video about someone calling up on a Friday and needing someone in a machine on Monday. I guess a platform's not going to do that. So what's your thoughts on the matter?
No, I agree. Platforms are relatively... You can find people. We use CV Library a lot. We use Indeed a lot. Yes, you can find people. We gender use we have spent a lot of money and a lot of time building an absolutely massive database which we use. So that's our win really, in terms of we can get an email or a text out to probably 300 digger drivers that live within half an hour of Southampton within 3 minutes. And if anyone's looking for work, we find people that way. And companies don't have that.
And for people who are not necessarily aware of how these systems work, what is it that you bring to the table from an employer's point of view that these platforms can't?
I think it's knowledge of the industry and it's knowledge of the individual. We've got records of everyone that's worked for us for the last 6 years, where they work, what their skills was. We do a little review when they leave. How good were they? How reliable were they? So we've got a lot of information on people which we can then quickly recruit and make a decision on and pass advice to our clients. And we can say, look, if you want someone in 24 notice, this is who we've got. He's worked for us 3 times before. He's turned up every day. He's a Monday clubber, but it's all I've got on a Friday. Do you want him on a Monday? It's one of those, and we can have honest conversations. And as we said before, it just comes down to a bit of honesty.
And Russ, same question to you. Why are you more valuable than a platform to clients?
Yeah, I think it's clients' time sat on the platform is not what generally they're employed to do, and getting wins off of platforms aren't. I said it earlier. You've got to sift 10,000 to find one good one. They're not necessarily big wins. The difference is from a recruiter or a local recruiter is that we will know everybody within the market from a client and a candidate point of view, and we'll know before they're looking, way before they get to a platform. And that's essentially what you're paying for if you're using a recruiter, is that time and experience, knowing that you're already 10 steps ahead if someone is looking. Because if someone puts their CV on a platform that's seriously looking, that is a good candidate, reality is everyone's going to see it and it'll be put everywhere, and that it's very hard for them to then get a job. So a client is paying for the time and the experience and the knowledge that it's taken 7 years to build these relationships with these people to get to your email box before anybody knows they're looking. So that's the difference.
I think you've almost answered my next question, but one of the things that's a common theme, from an employer, is recruitment consultant fees are quite high. Yeah, and I think you've probably heard that. I'm sure you both have heard that, and that's just a general sort of feeling. So, do you agree with that? And why are they higher than maybe a cost for maybe putting an ad on LinkedIn? So we're moving away from the platforms, but something like LinkedIn, it's a network. So how do you feel? Do you feel fees are high? Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant conversation I'm having about fees, but I don't mind having them because I get how it's perceived. I was in the construction industry, so I get, when it's coming out of your P&L, it's a lot of money what you're looking at. But again, from our point of view, it's time served. It's you may be paying 20% on a fee or 15% or whatever it may be. But you're paying that because you can't get it anywhere else. And I'd say this to our clients, that by all means, if our fees are too high, that's fine. Okay, look, if you can get it somewhere else, cool. But if you can't, this is where we are and this is our fee, because we have spent years working on this, getting these people that you can't get or anyone else can't get because they don't have the relationships. So when you look at it like that, I feel our fees are just. Yes, okay, we all negotiate around fees and it depends how long we work with you and rebate periods and all that stuff. But typically, yeah, I feel they're about right.
And Rich, same question to you. Client comes to you, says your fees are too high. What do you say?
I say, if that's what you think, that's what you think. But again, they're not. You know, they really aren't. It's no secret we're making £3 an hour on an operative. So if we place him with you for 45 hours next week, you're paying 120 quid. If you're telling me that your in-house recruiter can, you know, on their hourly rate can find, recruit, payroll, give you 30 days credit, check all their qualifications out, get references on them, do all that for 120 quid, crack on. Yeah. That's all I would say.
I think there's a slight difference here. I mean, you know, they're paying as they go, and as you say, it probably feels a little bit more a small amount. Where Russ, obviously, you're charging on a salary normally, I guess, at a percentage. There's a large amount of money due to be paid right on a candidate starting. So I think obviously clients will see that slightly differently. So okay,
so it's the same margin though. To be fair, it's just you have your margin in one lump, and we have ours over X amount of weeks. But it's the same. It probably adds up to a very similar amount if you look at it that way. Yeah.
So just moving on, so we're talking about the fees, and obviously you've got to go and find these people. Do you find, or do you feel that headhunting's an ethical practice?
Tend to not do that just because of the sector of the market we're in and how we do it. I don't think there's any problem with headhunting. It's up to employers to keep, to a certain degree, it's up to employers to keep their staff happy. And everyone's ambitious. Everyone's got, you know, career aspirations and personal goals. And if your current employer's not meeting them, I can't really see a problem with you helping that person move on to someone that will. I don't, you know, it's tough, but I think that's the reality of it. I don't know what Russ thinks.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out, Russ. That's definitely a big part of what you need to do. So how do you feel about headhunting?
I think it's a really good question, because I immediately I want to answer it and say it's absolutely fine. But then I think about my business and people headhunting my employees. It goes, well, you know, it's a bit more sore. So but I think the reality is, like Rich said, it's down to the employees to keep people happy and keep people motivated. And if they're after that career path, then they need to be able to have it. I think if you're headhunting out of a company you're working with, that's an absolute no. You cannot do that. People do it, obviously.
Yeah.
And look, we you know, be completely transparent. You know, people obviously do approach us for companies that we work with, but then they have to sign a non-compete. We haven't approached them; they've approached us.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, headhunting is part of recruitment. The whole recruitment industry and the whole construction industry, which we love and supply, would not exist or move in the pace that it does if we weren't headhunting. It's as simple as that, because projects need people, and you have to keep that momentum moving. And it's an ever-turning wheel, but it's something that I don't think you'll ever get rid of, or should really.
No.
I mean, you know, sticking on the theme of sort of ethical practices, and I think in the intro, I brought up some matters that we all recognise are good practice. And like before, you've already slightly answered my next question, but do you think recruitment should be regulated? And I think you've answered that. And how and what sort of things should be regulated?
I think it should definitely be regulated in terms of process and how people operate. So within our business, I'm absolutely zealous on it that things have to be done in a particular way, and if they're not, it's almost classed as gross misconduct, because you cannot operate and treat people when you're dealing with people's lives, and you know they're working and that's how they provide for their family. You have to operate in an honest way. So I think there should probably be some sort of governance in place that manages that audits that. There is some small things in place, but again, they're not. It's not legislation on how you do so. Like you think about your work, everything's legislated. Everything you have to do is around a legislation. We don't have that. So I think there needs to be some sort of governance in place that you're auditable and accountable to working to a correct process.
But out of interest, I mean, we use the term recruitment consultant. So consultant would imply a professional.
Yep.
And almost every professional in my world, whether they're a surveyor or an architect, has obviously, you know, you've got the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, you've got the Royal Institute of British Architects, and they will have a set of ethical practices and codes. So why does that not exist?
There, to be honest, Jamie, there is one or two, but they are like, I think they're made up by some pretty naff governing body. It's that no one ever sticks to. So I agree with you. I think they should be. You know, when I was in construction, I was MCIOB, and I was very proud to get to that point. You know, so I think there should be. I mean, it's not there. It's, you know, whether or not it will be there is another thing. But I think even if it's not, the awareness and the education about people that are coming into recruitment and the recruitment businesses need to be setting out their own stall of how they manage their staff to stop any of that, you know, sort of wild westness that we spoke about earlier. And
Rich, same question to you. I mean, do you think the practices should be regulated?
So, I don't know. When I first heard Russ's answer, I thought, no, there shouldn't be any regulation. And I thought about it, and I thought, we're Constructionline Gold accredited, right? So they are auditing all of our business. They're saying our assurance is right, our health and safety policy is right, our finances are in good standing, that we're in a position to be able to trade. They check all this stuff, but they don't check how we actually operate as a business day to day. And I thought, well, couldn't you add that onto Constructionline or something simple like that, or Builder's Profile that says, yeah, we're dealing with people that, you know, that are all right. Because everything else is audited, because Constructionline Gold takes flipping days to get all that stuff sorted out, you know, right to work and all the stuff that they check. And yeah, they could easily just check, you know, ask a couple of our people what they think of us. And
I think that's a really good point, actually, because we've got Constructionline Gold, we've got Chaz and Smaz, and all of that is very hard to get. You know, it's difficult. But there must be a bolt-on that you could put in there that, like, you know, they could choose 10, 15 clients that they have to speak to check how we operate.
Just a reference.
Just a reference or something. Yeah, candidate and client, you could choose a percentage.
I think we'd support that, I think, because if it gets rid of a load of people, if it gets rid of some of the cowboy sort of end of it that you've discussed earlier on, I think
help the industry.
All for that.
Yeah, I think one of the things in you know, certainly with the RICS is one of the ways that this gets brought to the forefront is obviously the complaints handling procedure, if you like, or the process. So, you know, obviously if Constructionline watch this video, there might be something there for them. Yeah. But that sounds like, you know, the natural bolt-on. You're talking about obviously a few more questions, an investigation in how you operate. But actually, if they handled a complaints handling procedure, that'd be a way of obviously then bringing people to task, wouldn't it? By not obviously doing what they say they're doing. Do you kind of agree with that, or is there something else that they could do?
Yeah, no, I think that'd be certainly a good start. You know, with all these things, it's having a start. It might not be the perfect thing at the point, but let's start somewhere, and so we can, you know, evolve that into a good auditable process that is checked, you know, monthly, quarterly, however it wants to be, because it definitely needs to be something.
Yeah. Do you agree, Richard?
Yeah, I think I concur. Maybe Constructionline will have some ideas.
Let's hope, eh? Or someone similar.
Exactly.
You mentioned other organisations. They do exist.
Systems are available.
So look, I want to ask one last question. So we've talked lots about skill shortages in the first video, and we talked a lot about recruitment. But surely a big part of, from an employer's point of view, a strategy should be retention.
Yeah.
So do you agree with, I mean, obviously it's quite a difficult question as a recruiter, but do you agree with, you know, employers having better retention of employees?
Absolutely, yeah. And I see it day in, day out, where you've got really, really qualified, good ground workers that could make excellent managers, and they just never quite, whether they're not spoken to or for whatever reason, they just keep doing what they're doing and they're not coming up through. And it's a real shame that there isn't more eyes on people and just helping them be the best that they can be. Because if you can create if you can upskill your existing people, then, you know, we haven't got to pay people like us to find more, and, you know, win-win.
Fantastic. Russ, same question to you.
Yeah, I think for any business, retention is absolutely key. You know, if you've got good people in the business, you need to be challenging them. You need to be growing them, developing them, and like I saying, it sort of it'll reduce the requirement for us. So maybe it's not key, but no, I'm joking. but no, it definitely is a thing, because it stops a lot of requirements coming ad hoc or too quickly or unplanned or unnecessarily, if you can retain good staff.
Right, thanks for that. So I'm going to ask you another interesting question. So with all your experience of recruiting and working in the construction industry, you're now going to give your younger self advice coming into the construction industry. What would it be?
Well, it would have been,
put you on the spot there.
Yeah, no, it would have been stay on the tools longer. That would have been my advice. So when I went back to, we de-skill things a little bit too quick, I find. I was a carpenter, I was a trainee, I was apprentice with Carillion. I was a qualified carpenter within 2 years. Realistically, I knew nothing. Went out on site, it was too big for me, got scared, jumped off, went into project management. Luckily, I was able to do that, but it would have been stay on the tools longer and learn from the bottom right the way up, because you become a better manager that way.
That's really insightful and really good advice there, by the way. And Rich, what about you? So you're going to give your younger self some advice?
Desperately trying to think. I think the younger self was leaving to start my business would be getting better people around me that would provide advice. Because where I sit now, the wealth of advice I've got around me in terms of business advice, in terms of marketing support, in terms of all these different things, never had them at the start. And I think there's a little bit of, we'll just get it done. How hard can it be? And it's bloody hard. That's what I found out. And the advice of colleagues and getting all your ducks lined up in terms of all of those things would have helped me out no end, I think.
And I very cheekily just a minute ago said one last question. I've already asked one extra. I'm going to ask one more as before. So obviously I've asked some questions around what you guys do and how you work and how you're perceived by others outside of your discipline. Is there anything I haven't covered or anything you want to add for anyone watching this video?
No, I think it's been a really good discussion, and thanks for inviting me along. I think it's been great.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. And Russ, anything I haven't covered or anything you'd like to sort of say to sort of summarise or what have you?
No, I think we've covered some really interesting points. I think Constructionline can go away and have a little think about the audit side of stuff.
Or others.
or others. Sorry. Yeah. So no, but it's been good, and we've hit some good topics. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Richard, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you coming on. Russ, thanks for your time. I appreciate you coming on. I think anyone watching this video would have had some real good insight into skill shortages and the recruitment, process and construction recruitment in general. Thank you both for your time. So I hope you found value in this video. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. We really look forward to hearing from you.